Mahatma Gandhi was the most important political and spiritual leader during the Indian independence movement. He was the pioneer of resistance to tyranny through mass civil disobedience, founded on nonviolence. He led India to independence and inspired the civil rights movements around the world. He was born on the 2nd of October 1869 in Porbandar, India. His father was the Prime Minister of Porbandar state, and his mother was his father's fourth wife. When he was only 13 years old, Gandhi was married to a 14-year-old girl in an arranged child marriage. At the age of 15, he had his first child, who died after a few days. In the following years, he had other 4 sons. In 1888, Gandhi moved to London to study law at the University College London. And in 1893, he went to South Africa to work for an Indian firm. In South Africa, Gandhi experienced discrimination and social injustice and started to work as a social activist. In 1915, Gandhi returned to India and in a few years became the leader of the Indian National Congress. Using the principles of non-violence, he led the campaign for Indian independence against Britain. The Salt March on the 12th of March 1930 was the first act against British rules after the Declaration of Independence. During a walk of 390 kilometers, Gandhi passed through a lot of villages and invited people to produce salt without paying the taxes. Bapu, this is the name that Indian people give to Gandhi, was arrested many times and spent 7 years in prison for his ideas and activities. But thanks to his commitment, on the 15th of August 1947, India became an independent nation. On the 30th of January 1948, Gandhi was assassinated while having a walk in New Delhi. His assassin was a Hindu nationalist. Today, part of his ashes rest at Deccan Khan Palace in Pune, India. Gandhi is officially honored as a father of the nation, and his birthday is a national holiday. Around the world, his birthday is the International Day of Non-Violence.
Martin Luther King Jr. was born in Atlanta, Georgia in 1929. Faith was always an important part of daily life, as both his father and grandfather were Baptist ministers. He thrived at a segregated high school, graduating at 15, before heading off to Morehouse College. He then dedicated 3 years to theological study at Crozier Seminary in Pennsylvania. While earning his graduate degree at Boston University, he met Coretta Scott, who he would marry and have 4 children with. King and his family settled in Montgomery, Alabama, when he became the 20th pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church. When Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to relinquish her seat to a white man on a Montgomery City bus in 1955, the incident lit a fire under the six. The Supreme Court ruled segregated buses to be unconstitutional. This was a major victory for the civil rights cause and proved King's nonviolent methods of protest could yield results. King was now the national face of the civil rights cause. He was jailed over 20 times, was once stabbed in the chest, his house was bombed, and he suffered relentless personal attacks on himself and his family. For a man of peaceful intentions, he unfortunately spent much of his life the target of violent intent, yet the threats never. Of all the speeches King delivered, none has stood the test of time like his famous I Have a Dream speech. Symbolically delivered from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963, in front of 250,000 people, both black and white. King had become such a force in America that he was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1963. A nice achievement indeed, but it paled in comparison when in 1964 he became the youngest man ever to win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Martin Luther King Jr. was an American. He was deeply American. And what's striking to me is that he had more confidence and faith in American democracy, in the Constitution, and in the principles of fairness and opportunity than nearly all of his critics.
While in Memphis to lead a protest march defending the rights of striking garbage workers in April of 1968, King delivered a rousing speech titled, "I've Been to the Mountaintop." It would be his last. Standing on the balcony of his second-floor room at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, King was shot and killed. In 1983, Ronald Reagan signed a proclamation declaring the third Monday of every January Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a public holiday to celebrate the man and what he stood for.
Against overwhelming odds, he achieved his dream of equality for all South Africans. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918 in a small South African village. It was 1941, and for the first time, Nelson came face to face with the brutal reality of a racially divided South Africa. He began attending meetings of the African National Congress, an organization that aimed to establish a democratic government. During this time, he married his first wife, Evelyn. A year later, the ANC adopted nonviolent civil disobedience as official policy. In 1952, they launched the campaign for the defiance of unjust laws, and Nelson traveled South Africa in support of that effort. The National Party government took steps to restrict Nelson's movements, banning him from attending any gatherings and confined him. Since he was wanted by the government, he traveled abroad, secretly gaining support for the cause. When he returned to South Africa, he was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison. While in prison, he was also charged with sabotage and conspiracy to overthrow the government. Mandela stood trial but refused to defend himself because this would legitimize the state's case. Mandela received a life sentence to be served in the prison on Robben Island, a desolate rock island 7 miles off the coast of Cape Town. Instead of being forgotten in jail, Mandela became a symbol for the movement to end apartheid. During the 1980s, several offers of release were made to Mandela on the condition that he renounce violence. He refused. In February of 1990, the government declared the ANC legal and announced Mandela was to be released. Now free at the age of 71, Mandela was named the head of the ANC. His work to help bring an end to apartheid earned him the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. In 1994, for the first time in more than 300 years, blacks in South Africa would have the opportunity to vote for their rulers. At the age of 75, Mandela was elected president in a landslide.
Becoming the president, I think he really moved the world, because this was a place that most of us didn't think would ever see black leadership. And so for him to rise to power after being in jail for 27 years, I think it was just a really historical moment.
Mandela proved to be a master politician, knowing when to be unyielding and when to compromise. Nelson used his stature to help mediate the civil war in Burundi. He continues to work with human rights organizations and for AIDS awareness.
I think that he will be known as, one of the peaceful freedom fighters of our time.
Nelson Mandela continues to be a defining symbol of how one man can truly make a difference in the world.